Hello, everybody. Welcome to the AV Speaks Music podcast. It is the 8th of February, 2017. And got a little bit of a change of plans for this podcast. I think I mentioned at the end of the last podcast that this week we're going to have a guest. If I didn't, well, the news is out. Well, we're not actually having a guest this week. He's going to be here next week, which put me in a bit of a pickle, if I'm going to be honest, about what was going to be on the agenda for this week. But all is well. I have figured it out. It's going to be a little bit off the cuff. I don't have notes. I just kind of have a few little things in front of me. Might be a lot of ums and I have no idea what I'm gonna say, but it's gonna be fun. Let's just say that whatever. I'm already off to a great start, and I'm just not gonna edit this out because why not? Hashtag raw and uncut. Raw and uncut. AV Speaks Music Podcast 2017. So yeah, we're gonna go back in time today. But before we go back in time, let's talk about what I've been listening to this past week. That was the longest pause ever. Anyway, so been listening to this new guy. Name's Matt Corby, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, Matt Corby, my good friend who actually will be on the podcast next week, introduced me to his, it's so nice and sweet voice. It's so good. It's just so chill. It's like you can just sit back and you just listen to him sing to you while you're doing homework, or if you just want to like do some slow jamming. It's so good. If you want some chill music, like, check him out. There's a good chance I'll talk about him again because I'm really, really enjoying him a lot. But also, I have been listening to my favorite album of 2015, Into the Sea by Atlas. And I don't know why I started listening to it, but I'm glad I started listening to it again because it's just a good album. Like I said, it was my favorite album of 2015, the same year that Blurry Face came out. So you would think, oh, but Austin, you're like this massive 21 Pilots fan. Isn't Blurry Face like your favorite album ever? No. Great album. It's not my favorite album ever, especially since Into the Sea came out. If you're into post-hardcore rock and want some really nice poetry, and like the whole album is a concept album about how grace is like an ocean, and just every song weaves into another. It's just a fantastic album. If you want a musical journey, I would highly recommend it. If you don't want a musical journey, I would still highly recommend it because, come on, it's great. All right? Just listen to it. And then I've just been listening to my boys, Reliant K. Going to be seeing them not this weekend, but next weekend on the 18th of February with my other boys, Switchfoot. Going to be good. Maybe I'll talk about that concert on the podcast that week. Who knows? Do a little bit of a concert review, you know? Reviewing some concerts. No, that should be very excited for that. So I've just been listening to them, kind of getting mentally prepared for what's to come. And yeah, that's what I've been listening to. Nothing new other than like Matt Corby, who my friend showed me. Nothing new that has just come out. I haven't really had the time to do that. Hopefully over break, my break from school, I'll have a lot of time to catch up on the music that I've missed so far this year. Have like a quick rundown episode of the podcast of that. But yeah, super awesome. So like I said, today we're going back in time. Da 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 da. I don't know why I did that, but that's okay. Yes, we're going back in time to the year 2007, 10 years ago. Why are we going back in time? Because it's what I like to call a rewind episode. We're rewinding to the year 2007. I'm going to tell you some of my favorite albums from the year 2007 that mean a lot to me. This segment today is just going to be albums that like I absolutely love from that year. But in the future, who knows? Maybe we'll talk about just great albums from that year that have like just gone on to sell so much money. I don't know. This segment, Rewind 2007. And let's get into it. The first album on the list. It's funny because most of these albums I didn't actually probably listen to in the year 2007. I think the year 2007, looking at the albums on this list, I was just barely starting to get into other like music other than like Christian contemporary music. I think that's when I was just starting to break through. So yeah. So most of these albums I didn't actually listen to in 2007, starting with this one. That being said, not long after 2007, I heard of this band. One of my favorite bands of all time, definitely in my top 10, The Almost, and the album Southern Weather. This album is super, super good alternative rock with a hint of the flavor of Southern rock, alternative Southern rock. It's so good. And I love Aaron Gillespie's voice so much. The first album I was introduced by them was, I heard the song Southern Weather first by them, but then the first album that I really got into was Monster. But finally came back to Southern Weather, the album Southern Weather, and there's just so many gems on this album. Starting with the opener, Say the Sooner. You know you're in for it when you hear that. So good. So good. But I think what makes this album special to me and why it's one of my favorite albums is because of the song Amazing Because It Is. This song takes the Amazing Grace verse. We all know and love the first verse of Amazing Grace, and puts it into a different melody, and puts a little bit more of like a personal context to it from Mr. Gillespie. But just the melody on that. Go look it up if you've never heard the song before. He really did something special on that. And I don't know, it might be just me, but Aaron, if you could just stop touring with Under Oath tour with Under Oath. I want you to tour with Under Oath. Under Oath, they're a big deal. But if you just stop for a little bit, maybe bring another Almost album out. Maybe, come on. There's so many good songs. Say the Sooner, Drive There Now. Dirty and Left Out is such an emotional powerhouse of a song. Southern Weather, or I said Amazing Because It Is. And then the acoustic version of Say the Sooner is almost just as magical as the original recording of it. Just a great album. didn't get to it at first when I heard them, but it still holds up. It doesn't feel like it's 10 years old. Actually, most of these albums don't feel like they're 10 years old. But this album definitely holds up. If you like alternative rock, if you were big into that back in the day, just come back to this album, man. If you've never heard of The Almost, what are you doing? Actually, you'll probably be very disappointed because they're not together anymore. Anyway, we move on to another sad topic for me. This next album, probably out of all the albums I'm going to talk about, might actually be my favorite, maybe, question mark. We're going to go with that. It is the album by another one of my top favorite bands, Anne Berlin, with the album Cities. And this is the album that really got me into Anne Berlin. I don't remember the first song I heard. I think the first song I heard was The Unwinding Cable Car, which is such an acoustic ballad of a song that it was probably easy to draw me in. But there's just looking at all the songs on this album, there's not a bad song on this album whatsoever. This is, Godspeed, Adelaide, Whispering to Clamor, Hello Alone is such a cry, like, to loneliness. Reclusion, such a good song. Inevitable, if you want some mushy gushy love song, Inevitable is a really good mushy gushy love song. Dismantle Repair is one of my all-time favorites by Anne Berlin. And then it just ends with this epic, not just about 9-minute song, Thin. It's just called Thin. That you just don't expect. This album, by most fans of Anne Berlin, most fans will say that this album is their best album. And I don't know, this album has a lot of nostalgia purposes to me, like a lot of nostalgia blocking out everything. So it's like hard to say like, yeah, this is their best album ever, when they just have a lot of great albums. Like Never Take Friendship Personal. I love their album Vital. But this album will always hold a special place in my heart because this is when I fell in love with Anne Berlin. And when they started becoming one of my favorites. I think the first time I listened to this whole album was right after they left Tooth and Nail Records and went to their big major label. But yeah, this album's just so good. And unfortunately, Anne Berlin, they're no longer with us. They have since broken up. Their last album, Lowborn, came out in 2014, and we have not heard any new Anne Berlin since. Stephen Christian, the lead singer, is still making music, though. Has a side, electronic indie pop group, Anchor and Braille. I believe he's coming out with a worship album this year, which I am pretty excited for because I love his voice. But yeah, there's also, they have a live album where they play this album front to back live. They did it on their last tour. Man, Anne Berlin, they're just so good. Just get back together. Like, you don't have to get back together right now, but just get back together eventually, if you could, so I can see you again. I would definitely go listen to this album if you're into any sort of alternative rock, really. It's a good album. It's definitely one of my favorites. I'm not sure if I would put it eventually. I will probably put together my favorite albums of all time, and this album might make it on the list. I don't know. This is a special album to me. Really love this album. But we move on. And we move on to my favorite band of all time. In 2007, they came out with 2 albums. Yeah, crazy, right? They came out with 2 albums in 2007. Let's just get the smaller one out of the way. They came out with their Christmas album, Let It Snow Baby, Let It Rain Dear. And I'm not going to talk too much about this album, just because it is the Christmas album, and 'tis not the season, but this is, and I'm probably biased when I say this, the best Christmas album ever. There's just a lot of songs on here that I listen to year round. I Celebrate the Day is such a wonderful, put that on rotation on the Christmas stations. Come on. I mean, In Like a Lion Always Winter isn't really a Christmas song. It showed up on their apathetic. I think I might be pronouncing it wrong, but whatever. EP, supposed to be for Chronicles of Narnia movie, but didn't get in there. But really good song. Listen to that all year round. There's just a lot of fun songs on this album as well. And just listen to Good King Wenceslas because it's hilarious. Anyway, we move on to the album that is the bigger deal. The album 57 years ago. 2007. Again, did not listen to this album the year it came out. Again, the year 2007 was just the year right before I got into all these bands. So these were the albums that had just came out, were their most recent albums, pretty much. So I just went back to them, pretty much. But this album is just another classic album. If you're into pop punk Relient K, we all know the pop punk Relient K sound. If you are into the album, then I'm guessing that you like 5 Score because it's right up that alley. But what else I like about this album is that you start to see a little bit more diverging from that, with songs like Faking My Own Suicide, Deathbed. I'll just come back to Deathbed in a second because, gosh, that's just an epic song. Given Till There's Nothing Left is more a classic, stripped back Relient K song. The Best Thing is definitely more of a pop song than a punk song on the end of pop punk. They even got a little acapella Pleading the Fifth. They got a little acapella ditty. Not that that's the first time they've ever done it, but bringing it back. And this was the last album that drummer Dave Douglas was on, which is fantastic. I love the fact that he's touring with them again because he is a good drummer. It really just fits Relient K really well. So it's awesome that he's back on tour with them. But this is the last. I mean, other than Air for Free, because he did record some drums on Air for Free, but last album that he was the official member of the band was 5 Score. I feel like a lot of people think that this was not when they started dipping down. I think this is when they started dipping down out of relevancy, I guess. I mean, in my life, Relient K have always been relevant. But I feel like this is the album where they started getting a little bit less airplay. I mean, was such a huge album. And then this album, I feel like no matter what album came after it was going to be hard to top because is fantastic. But this album, I think this album does a fairly good job. And like I said, it brings a little bit more to the table, a little bit more variety. Like I said, Faking My Own Suicide is a chill acoustic like alternative-ish, not really, pop song, I guess. Yeah, it's a good album. Let's go back to Deathbed though, because my goodness, Deathbed. Like, who else could just be all like, hey, we just came out with probably our most influential album, the biggest album of our career. Let's tack on an 11-minute epic story masterpiece at the end of this album, and we'll see how it goes. And it went well. It's a tear-jerking story. Like, if you've never heard the song Deathbed, go listen to it and try not to cry, because it's emotional. It's fun. And John Foreman comes at the end of it from Switchfoot. So, like, come on. What? You got nothing to lose. Like, seriously. I think it's great that they're playing this song live now. To the last 2 times I've went and saw them, that this is the last song that they've done, which is so much fun. And on the tour with Switchfoot, they brought John Foreman out. Of course, you got to bring out John, man. It's just so much. There's so much going on. It's not just a piano ballad, but it's not just like. It's just, it's so good. I could sing the praises of Reliant K all day, but I won't. But even though this album probably is more in the middle range for me on the Reliant K scale of albums, it's still super good looking at this track listing. And some of my favorite songs come off of this album. I love the song Faking My Own Suicide. It's so good. Deathbed, of course. Come Right Out and Say It is a fantastic song. And I will always love the song Forgiven. Devastation and Reform is so good too. Sorry. Yeah, good album. Wouldn't be, if you've never listened to Reliant K, wouldn't be the first album that I would tell you to go listen to, but it is definitely fits fantastically in their discography, and it's a solid album. The last album I will be talking about today is from a heavier band, not full on metal, but hard rockers, 1,000-Foot Crutch, and the album is The Flame in All of Us. And this was the album that really got me into heavier music, which is kind of strange to say. But yeah, it did. This album is a good album. And again, there's probably a lot of nostalgia, like clouding my judgment, but it's so many good songs. Falls Apart is such a classic. Like, you can't just if you even heard a 1,000-Foot Crutch, like, you've probably heard the song Falls Apart, and if you haven't, I'm sorry. My probably one of my all-time favorite songs by 1,000-Foot Crutch, Favorite Disease, is on this album. I think what 1,000-Foot Crutch does really well is blend some hard rocking moments on their albums with more ballady rock ballady moments on their albums, and I think they've always done that really well. Unfortunately, their 2 latest albums have not been like that. Oxygen Inhale being more of a ballad album, and Exhale being more of a hard rock album. Again, not a problem. I just think that mixing them together is more of a cohesive piece of music. But like songs like What Do We Know, even though it can get a little repetitive at times, very good. Learn to Breathe, Inhuman, and then the closer, Wish You Well. Wish You Well is such a good song. They always close out their albums with fantastic ballads, and this doesn't change anything. The last song, the like quote unquote hidden song at the end of Wish You Well, is also fantastic. This is one of my favorite albums by Thousand Foot Crutch. It's probably my number 2, behind The End Is Where We Begin. But yeah, this is a solid album. It's what got me started into heavier music. Even though it's just a hard rock album. I know, no metal, boo-hoo. But yeah, it's a good album. I would definitely say go back and listen to it. If you're into the modern hard rock sound. I feel like this album honestly doesn't hold. It might not hold up as well as some of the other albums that I talked about. Like Southern Weather holds up really well. Cities holds up really well. I don't know if this album holds up. I think you can hear that it might be a little tiny bit dated, but it's not bad, especially if you like a little bit older hard rock sound. It's a good album. I can't believe that this album is also 10 years old this year. I mean, Misery Business by Paramore is 10 years old. Or, sorry, that's a song. The album's Riot. My bad. You can tell what song I like off of that album. Crush. Anyway, good song. Good album. Riot. Paramore. 10 years old. Go back and listen to that. I'm not going to talk about that album, but another good album. Let me know some of your favorite albums from the year 2007. These are mine. These are my favorite albums. These are my albums that like I go back and like, yeah, it takes me back to like around that time. Like I said, I probably heard all of these albums like the year after, but like it brings me back to right around that time of my childhood. 10 years ago. Dang. I was 11 years old, 10 years old. And these albums came out. That's crazy. Anyway, go back, go listen to them. Go listen to Amberlynn. I'm listening to Amberlynn this weekend because like after talking about cities, I wanna go listen to it. So good. Anyway, that is all I have for you guys this week. Next week, I promise we're gonna have a guest. I'm so excited for him to come on. We're gonna talk about some fantastic albums, some of his favorite albums. It's great. I was recently on a video with my good friend Joe over at Casually Different, his YouTube channel. I will link that in the description so you guys go see it. He has some really funny stuff. Hopefully I can get him on the podcast next month. Squeeze him in there some point. Joe, I know you're listening. You will be on the podcast. Yeah, go. Hopefully, sometime this weekend, I'm going to start the Facebook page. I've kind of mentioned in the past that I was going to start a Facebook page. This weekend, hopefully, will be the weekend. I will let you know when it is up, so you can go like me over there. Yeah, just another place to follow me at. You can follow me on the app Symbol. It's like Instagram, but for music. You can follow me over there at Virice5, VIRICE 5. You can see what I'm listening to on a more regular basis. Yeah. Thank you all for listening so much. It's so nice just to be able to sit back and talk about music. Hopefully, I have some plans, some things in the works. I kind of haven't nailed down exactly what this podcast is. Like, we've talked about modern stuff, we talked about old stuff, we talked about music-related like topics. Like, this really just jumps from week to week. I hope that doesn't bother any of you. Please let me know what you're liking the most. like me to do more reviews, if you like me to talk about more music related topics, older music, newer music, whatever, let me know, because this is for you guys as much as it's for me. I want you guys to listen, and I want it to be enjoyable for you guys. So just let me know how it's going. Give me feedback. Give me ideas. Yeah. Thanks for listening again, guys. I will see you next week. Well, I won't see you. You know what I mean. Next week there'll be another podcast. And have a wonderful week, guys. Goodbye.